Since 1855, the Buddhist monastic community in Cambodia has been split into two divisions, excepting a brief period of unification between 1981 and 1991, the Maha Nikaya and the Dhammayuttika Nikaya. The Maha Nikaya is by far the larger of the two monastic fraternities, claiming the allegiance of a large majority of Cambodian monks. The Dhammayuttika Nikaya, despite royal patronage, remains a small minority, isolated somewhat by its strict discipline and connection with Thailand. The Maha Nikaya monastic hierarchy, headed by the Sangkreach, Sangaraja, has been closely connected with the Cambodian government since its re-establishment in the early 1980s. High-ranking officials of the Maha Nikaya have often spoken out against criticism of the government and in favor of government policies, including calling for the arrest of monks espousing opposition positions. Officials from the Maha Nikaya hierarchy appoint members to lay committees to oversee the running of temples, who also act to ensure that temples do not become organizing points for anti-government activity by monks or lay supporters. Nevertheless, divisions within the Maha Nikaya fraternity do exist. Adolescent monks in Cambodia. Divisions within the Sangha between modernists and traditionalists were recorded in Cambodia as early as 1918. Broadly speaking, modernists have attempted to respond to Western criticism of Buddhist institutions by reinterpreting Buddhist teachings, particularly those related to philosophy and meditation, in light of both modern secular knowledge and the textual source of Khmer nationalism and Buddhism. Mural painting depicting Gautama Buddha at Wat Bodum. Cambodian Buddhism helped foment Khmer national identity and the independence movement in the 20th century, leading to Cambodian independence as a sovereign state. In their attempt to separate the Khmer people from their cultural allegiance to the neighboring Theravada kingdom of Siam, the French encouraged a sense of Khmer identity by emphasizing Khmer language studies and Khmer Buddhist studies. They established Pali schools within Cambodia to keep the Cambodian monks from traveling to Siam for higher education. These Khmer language study centers became the birthplace of Cambodian nationalism. Cambodian adaptations. Cambodian Buddhism has no formal administrative ties with other Buddhist bodies, although Theravada monks from other countries, especially Thailand, Laos, Myanmar, and Sri Lanka, may participate in religious ceremonies in order to make up the requisite number of clergy. Cambodian Buddhism is organized nationally in accordance with regulations formulated in 1943 and modified in 1948. During the monarchical period, the king led the Buddhist clergy. Prince Sihanouk continued in this role even after he had abdicated and was governing as head of state. He appointed both the heads of the monastic orders and other high-ranking clergy. After the overthrow of Sihanouk in 1970, the new head of state, Lon Nol, appointed these leaders. Two monastic orders constituted the clergy in Cambodia. The larger group, to which more than 90% of the clergy belonged, was the Maha Nikaya. The Thammayut order was far smaller. The Thammayut was introduced into the ruling circles of Cambodia from Thailand in 1864. It gained prestige because of its adoption by royalty and by the aristocracy, but its adherents were confined geographically to the Phnom Penh area. Among the few differences between the two orders is stricter observance by the Thammayut bhikkhus, monks, of the rules governing the clergy. In 1961 the Maha Nikaya had more than 52,000 ordained monks in some 2,700 Wats, whereas the Thammayut order had 1,460 monks in just over 100 Wats. In 1967 more than 2,800 Maha Nikaya Wats and 320 Thammayut Wats were in existence in Cambodia. After Phnom Penh, the largest number of Thammayut Wats were found in Bat Dambang, Stoing Trang, Prey Vang, Kampot, and Kampong Thum provinces. Each order has its own superior and is organized into a hierarchy of 11 levels. The 7 lower levels are known collectively as the Thananukram. The 4 higher levels together are called the Rajagana. The Maha Nikaya order has 35 monks in the Rajagana, the Dhammayuttika has 21. Each monk must serve for at least 20 years to be named to these highest levels. The cornerstones of Cambodian Buddhism are the Buddhist bhikkhu and the Wat. Traditionally, each village has a spiritual center, a Wat, where from 5 to more than 70 bhikkhus reside. A typical Wat in rural Cambodia consists of a walled enclosure containing a sanctuary, several residences for bhikkhus, a hall, a kitchen, quarters for nuns, and a pond. The number of monks varies according to the size of the local population. The sanctuary, which contains an altar with statues of the Buddha and, in rare cases, a religious relic, is reserved for major ceremonies and usually only for the use of bhikkhus. Other ceremonies, classes for monks and for laity, and meals take place in the hall. Stupas containing the ashes of extended family members are constructed near the sanctuary. Fruit trees and vegetable gardens tended by local children. Role of Buddhism in Cambodian life. Buddhist monks traditionally were called upon to perform a number of functions in Cambodian life. They participated in all formal village festivals, ceremonies, marriages, and funerals. They also might have participated in ceremonies to name infants and in other minor ceremonies or rites of passage. Monks did not lead the ceremonies, however, because that role was given to the Achar, or master of ceremonies. The monk's major function was to say prayers of blessing. They were often healers and, in traditional Khmer culture, they were the practitioners whose role was closest to that of modern psychiatrists. They might also have been skilled in astrology. The monk traditionally occupied a unique position in the transmission of Khmer culture and values. By his way of life, he provided a living model of the most meritorious behavior a Buddhist could follow. He also provided the laity with many opportunities for gaining merit. For centuries, monks were the only literate people residing in rural communities. They acted as teachers to temple servants, to novices, and to newly ordained monks. Until the 1970s, most literate Cambodian males gained literacy solely through the instruction of the Sangha. After independence from France, young Cambodian intellectuals changed their attitude toward the clergy. In describing a general shift away from Buddhism in the late 1950s and early 1960s, Vickery cites the early work of anthropologist Maimako Ebihara and his own observations. He suggests that the Khmer Rouge was able to instill anti-religious feelings in younger males because the latter were losing interest in becoming monks even during their teenage years, the traditional temporary period of service. The monks themselves had abandoned some of their traditional restrictions and had become involved in politics. At intervals during the colonial period, some monks had demonstrated or had rebelled against French rule, and in the 1970s monks joined pro-government demonstrations against the communists. Anti-clerical feelings reached their highest point among the Khmer Rouge, who at first attempted to indoctrinate monks and to force them to pass anti-clerical ideas onto the laity. Under the Khmer Rouge regime, monks were expelled forcibly from the Wats and were compelled to do manual labor. Article 20 of the 1976 Constitution of Democratic Kampuchea permitted freedom of religion, but banned all reactionary religions that were detrimental to the country. The Minister of Culture stated that Buddhism was incompatible with the revolution and was an instrument of exploitation. Under this regime, to quote the Finnish Inquiry Commission, the practice of religion was forbidden and the pagodas were systematically destroyed. Observers estimated that 50,000 monks died during the Khmer Rouge regime. The status of Buddhism and of religion in general after the Vietnamese invasion was at least partially similar to its status in pre-Khmer Rouge times. According to Michael Vickery, who has written positively about the People's Republic of Kampuchea, public observance of Buddhism and of Islam was re-established, and government policies allowed Cambodians freedom to believe or not to believe in Buddhism. Vickery cites some differences in this re-established Buddhism. Religious affairs were overseen by the PRK's Kampuchean, or Khmer, United Front for National Construction and Defense, KUFNT, the mass organization that supported the state by organizing women, youths, workers, and religious groups. In 1987 there was only a single Buddhist order because the Dhammayuttika order had not been revived. The organization of the clergy also had been simplified. The Sangharaja, primate of the Buddhist clergy, had been replaced by a Prathian, chairman. Communities that wanted Wats had to apply to a local front committee for permission. The Wat were administered by a committee of the local laity. Private funds paid for the restoration of the Wats damaged during the war and the Khmer Rouge era, and they supported the restored Wats. Monks were ordained by a hierarchy that has been Martin offers another, more pessimistic, view of the religious situation in the late 1980s. In a 1986 study, she asserts that the PRK showed outsiders only certain aspects of religious freedom. She also states that the few Wats that were restored had only 2 or 3 old monks in residence and that public attendance was low. The monks were allowed to leave the Wats only for an hour in the mornings, to collect their food, or during holy days. Lay people who practiced their faith were about the same ages as the monks, and they were allowed to visit the Wats only in the evenings. A government circular had also instructed civil servants to stop celebrating the traditional New Year festival. Some traditional Buddhist festivals still were tolerated, but the state collected a 50% tax on donations. Martin believes that Buddhism was threatened externally by state repression and by non-support and internally by invalid clergy. She noted that the 2 Buddhist superiors, Venerable Long Chim and Venerable Tep Vong, were both believed to be from Vietnam. Venerable Tep Vong was concurrently the superior of the Buddhist clergy, vice president of the PRK's Khmer National Assembly, and vice president of the KUFNT National Council. She quoted a refugee from Bat Dambang as having said, during the meetings, the Khmer administrative authorities, accompanied by the Vietnamese experts, tell you, religion is like poison, it's like opium, it's better to give the money to the military, so they can fight. Buddhism is still strong among the various Cambodian refugee groups throughout the world, although some younger monks, faced with the distractions of a foreign culture, have chosen to leave the clergy and have become laicized. In the United States in 1984, there were 12 Cambodian Wats with about 21 monks. In the 1980s, a Cambodian Buddhist Wat was constructed near Washington, D.C., financed by a massive outpouring of donations from Cambodian Buddhists throughout North America. This Wat is one of the few outside Southeast Asia that has the consecrated boundary within which ordinations may be performed. Most of the major Cambodian annual festivals are connected with Buddhist observances. The Khol Nam, New Year Festival, takes place in mid-April. It was one of the few festivals allowed under the Khmer Rouge regime. Chum Ben, celebrated in September or in October, is a memorial day for deceased ancestors and for close friends. Meek Bo Kia, in January or February, commemorates the last sermon of the Buddha. Visak Bo Kia, in April or in May, is the triple anniversary of the birth, death, and enlightenment of the Buddha. The Kolvasa takes place in June or in July. It marks the beginning of a penitential season during which the monks must remain within the temple compounds. The Kathen marks the end of this season, celebrated in September. It features offerings, especially of robes, to the monks. The Kathen was still celebrated in the PRK in the late 1980s. Cambodian Buddhism exists side by side with, and to some extent intermingles with, pre-Buddhist animism and Brahmin practices. Most Cambodians, whether or not they profess to be Buddhists or Muslims, believe in a rich supernatural world. When ill, or at other times of crisis, or to seek supernatural help, Cambodians may enlist the aid of a practitioner who is believed to be able to propitiate or obtain help from various spirits. Local spirits are believed to inhabit a variety of objects, and shrines to them may be found in houses, in Buddhist temples, along roads, and in forests. Several types of supernatural entities are believed to exist. They make themselves known by means of inexplicable sounds or happenings. Among these phenomena are Khmayak, ghosts, Pret and Bisach, particularly nasty demons, the spirits of people who have died violent, untimely, or unnatural deaths, Arak, evil spirits, usually female, Nikta, tutelary spirits residing in inanimate objects, Niang Tia, guardians of the house, Meba, ancestral spirits, and Ren Konvil, elf-like guardians of animals. All spirits must be shown proper respect, and, with the exception of the Niang Tia and Ren Konvil, they can cause trouble ranging from mischief to serious life-threatening illnesses. An important way for living people to show respect for the spirits of the dead is to provide food for the spirits. If this food is not provided, the spirit can cause trouble for the offending person. For example, if a child does not provide food for the spirit of its dead mother, that spirit can cause misfortunes to happen to the child. Aid in dealing with the spirit world may be obtained from a crew, shaman or spirit practitioner, an achar, ritualist, thmup, witch, sorcerer or sorceress, or a ruparak, medium, usually male. The crew is a kind of sorcerer who prepares charms and amulets to protect the wearer from harm. He can cure illnesses, find lost objects, and prepare magic potions. Traditionally, Cambodians have held strong beliefs about protective charms. Amulets are worn routinely by soldiers to ward off bullets, for example. The crew are believed to have the power to prepare an amulet and to establish a supernatural link between it and the owner. A crew may acquire considerable local prestige and power. Many crew are former Buddhist monks. Another kind of magical practitioner is the achar, a specialist in ritual. He may function as a kind of master of ceremonies at a wat and as a specialist in conducting spirit worship rituals connected with life cycle ceremonies. Ruparak are mediums who can be possessed by supernatural beings and communicate with the spirit world. The thmup are sorcerers who cause illnesses. Fortune tellers and astrologers, Hayar are important in Cambodian life. They are consulted about important decisions such as marriages, building a new house, or going on a long journey. They are believed to be able to foretell future events and to determine lucky or unlucky days for various activities. Villagers are sensitive to the power and to the needs of the spirit world. According to observations by an American missionary in the early 1970s, villagers consulted the local guardian spirit to find out what the coming year would bring. A new province chief held a ceremony to ask the protection of the spirits over the province, and soldiers obtained magic cloths and amulets from mediums and shamans to protect them from the bullets of the enemy. Before embarking on a mission against enemy forces, a province chief might burn incense and call on a spirit for aid in defeating the enemy. Examples of Brahmin influences were various rituals concerned with the well-being of the nation carried out by the ruler and the Baku, a Brahmin priestly group attached to the royal court. These rituals were reportedly stopped after Sihanouk's ouster in 1970.